This episode of The Next Best Thing was made possible through the generous support of Myriad Oncology.
Myriad Oncology provides a portfolio of advanced genetic and tumor genomic testing solutions, including risk assessment, screening, tools to aid treatment guidance, and survivorship planning. The Myriad Oncology offering is designed to meet the unique needs of oncology specialists and their patients across each step in the patient care continuum.
To learn more, visit myriad.com/oncology.
Hey listeners, want us to let you know when new episodes are available? Simply hit the subscribe or follow button on the Next Best Thing podcast, wherever you listen to podcasts. Also, join the conversation on our Facebook group by searching the Next Best Thing podcast group on Facebook.
On this episode of The Next Best Thing,
joining us today is Jill Blomberg, a legal expert in family law with over 25 years of experience.
Growing up with not only 2 lawyers in the family, but 2 judges in the family, definitely.
Before someone gets married, what's the best way to protect your assets? Is it necessary?
You could have 2 young 25-year-olds who are getting married who might have Sometimes we have clients who have gotten divorced and obviously don't want to go through a second divorce, or if they're going. It's not just about protecting assets in a prenup, but sometimes you want to guard against physicians. Depending on the age at which we get married, we might be coming into a marriage with a lot of debt.
let's say I'm thinking about getting married. Would a prenup be valuable, or is it only if I've really started to become net worth positive?
Really, really important to talk about finances and how you want.
If someone has $300,000 in educational debt, they get married and then get divorced, is that debt that person's alone? How do we start this conversation? And how many relationships fall apart because of a prenup?
This is Carla, Ellie,
Michael,
Susie,
and Susan. Welcome to The Next Breast Thing, a podcast by the American Society of Breast Surgeons for the entire breast community.
We're a group of devoted surgeons from different parts of the country,
inviting you to journey with us into the science of breast
through the heart and soul of our breast community.
from advances in procedures and patient care to personal transformation, we're here to support you.
So, if you're part of the breast community and can't seem to find the answers, this is the next breast thing.
Joining us today is Jill Blomberg, a legal expert in family law with over 25 years of experience. Jill is admitted to practice in New York, Connecticut, and the U.S. Supreme Court. She's a fellow of the American and International Academies of Matrimonial Lawyers. Known for her empathy, negotiation skills, and unwavering commitment to justice, she is highly respected by clients and peers alike. Her involvement with the American, Connecticut, and Fairfield County Bar Associations further reflects her deep dedication to the legal profession and her community. Jill, welcome to the Next Best Thing podcast.
Thank you, Susan, so much. I am so excited to be here.
Before we dive into today's topic, we'd love for you to share your story with our listeners.
I grew up in New York City. I was the older child. I had a mother and a grandfather, both who were not only attorneys, but judges. Growing up with not only 2 lawyers in the family, but 2 judges in the family definitely played a role in where I was heading. Starting from about 10th grade in high school, after a quick run at the Gap for a summer job, I worked every single summer in a different law-related job. By the time I got to law school, I had had about 7 or 8 years of different jobs under my belt for the summers, really giving me insight into different arenas in the law.
It's interesting, in our generation, I remember in my med school class, the first day they asked how many of us had physicians as parents. I certainly did not, but many of our class did. And that has changed. Lots of physicians' children are no longer going into medicine. Is that true for law also?
I would say yes. I have 2 children. I don't want to say I discourage them to go into the law, but I definitely don't encourage them to go into the law. Let me put it that way. I've been extremely lucky, extremely fortunate with my path and my career, but I think it can be challenging, but it also can be extraordinarily rewarding, especially in the line of work that I do.
And I would say most of us in medicine would probably describe it the same way. I have 2 children and neither one are going into medicine. I didn't outwardly discourage them, but it was not encouraged either. So I think they read the tea leaves on that one and chose other paths. So let's get started. It seems like the best place to start is before someone gets married. What's the best way to protect your assets? Is it necessary? I mean, if you're getting married at 25 compared to 45, what's the differences and how do we look at that?
That's a great question. The best way to protect assets is a premarital agreement or a prenuptial agreement. It has become very common now, much more commonplace now than I'd say 25, 30 years ago. It's not so much about the age of the party, but the issues that pertain to the party. So you could have 2 young 25-year-olds who are getting married who might have extraordinarily wealthy parents. They might have trusts. They might not have a lot in their name right now, but potentially in the future could inherit a lot of money. That might be a party who might need a premarital agreement. Sometimes we have clients who have gotten divorced and obviously don't want to go through a second divorce, or if they're going to, and if it was difficult, they want to protect their assets. So that might be another candidate for a premarital agreement. And then we also have elderly clients who might have gotten divorced once or twice. I've had one that was 4 times. Those are clients that, again, they want to protect their assets. And I just want to note, it's not just about protecting assets in a prenup, but sometimes you want to guard against liabilities. Maybe you have someone you're marrying who has a gambling problem or who is coming into the marriage with a lot of debt. Or maybe you're concerned about a business that they have or a business that you have that you want to protect. So it's not just about protecting assets.
I was just going to ask a specific question about physicians. We represent kind of a unique group of people coming into marriage, and we talk about people in their 20s and 30s. A lot of physicians, depending on the age at which we get married, we might be coming into a marriage with a lot of debt. A lot of physicians may not have debt, but be going into private practice. We may be future high income earners. Liability, as you talked about, maybe not. I don't have a gambling problem, although we have talked a lot about playing craps on this podcast, so let's forget that. But we think a lot about medical legal liability and how does that play into our personal life. So any other kind of particular niches that are unique to physicians and prenups that we need to be thinking about, or our listeners need to be thinking about?
One of the things that is really important for physicians is their time and as it relates to custody. And I think it's important to understand because of their hours, depending on physicians that are young and maybe have very long hours or they're not so flexible in terms of what they can do. It's important to understand that a prenup cannot protect you in that regard. Prenups cannot address custody issues. They can address monetary issues. That is something you just want to think about. But in terms of the financial part, you want to be thinking about your future. I practice in Connecticut. I'm admitted in New York as well, but I practice primarily in Connecticut. And every state has different laws. So it's really important to think about what state you want to have your prenup in if you're going to have a prenup. Interestingly, it doesn't necessarily have to be the state that you currently reside. Perhaps you currently reside in New York City, but you and your fiance are going to be moving to Connecticut, or maybe you're going to be moving to California. You can choose the state's law that you want. Now, you really generally want to have some sort of connection with that state. For example, with regard to physicians, in New York, the physician's license is valued. There's a value to that. Whereas in Connecticut, there is no value. There's alimony orders based on income and things of that nature, but the actual license does not have a value. So
how do they come up with that value in New York?
You would hire a forensic accountant and they would do a full forensic analysis and evaluation. I've had clients sometimes that will elect to get divorced in Connecticut versus New York or New York versus Connecticut, if you can. I mean, it's not just a simple snap of the finger, but Connecticut is a pretty easy state to start a divorce. You don't need a 2-year waiting period or things of that nature. So it's something to really think about for physicians.
Jill, I have a question. I'm relatively early in my career, and just like the situation Carl is talking about, I have a lot of debt. I'm not necessarily a positive net worth individual. Let's say I'm thinking about getting married. Would a prenup be valuable, or is it only if I've really started to become net worth positive? And I do want to double click on a point that I think you're also making, the importance of talking about finances before we get married and putting cards on the table and knowing about debt and knowing the net worth of the person that you're getting into a relationship with.
And the spending habits of them.
And the spending habits, right.
How they look at finances, their relationship with money is critically important.
I think that's very important. With regard to the debt, I would say it would more likely than not be your fiance in this example that would want the prenup. It's more typically to protect assets, but when we have a situation where someone has extraordinary debt, there are situations where the other party would want a prenup. Really, really important to talk about finances and how you want to run your household and what do you want to rent or buy or where do you think you want to live. I have so many cases where things seem to fall apart because one party might have a lot of family money and the parents or the grandparents in that example want to pay for a lot of private education and extracurricular activities. And that sounds wonderful. But on the other hand, maybe sometimes it's not so wonderful because it might put the other party in a position where they feel a little bit less than, if you know what I mean.
Yeah. Jill, you touched on a topic and I just want to clarify it. So if someone has $300,000 in educational debt, which unfortunately for medical school is not unusual, they get married and then get divorced. Is that debt that person's alone or it's split? What happens with that?
It depends on the state. In every state, you put forth what's called a financial affidavit. And it has your income, your assets, your expenses, and your liabilities. And some states, it's called a net worth statement. In Connecticut, it's called a financial affidavit. But generally speaking, every state has the same type of document. And it's not that that debt would be solely the doctor's. It would be marital debt. How it's divided, though, would be based on the state's laws. So in Connecticut, for example, it would depend on a whole variety of things. It wouldn't just be as simple as if it's your debt, you keep it.
Obviously, people are listening and we're giving them some food for thought on this. Should we be meeting with somebody like you before we're getting married? I mean, when should people be consulting with a lawyer? Does it always make sense just to start having these conversations with a professional? If you're in your 30s, you're starting to accumulate some reasonable wealth and you're not really sure if you want a prenup or not. Is it worth having a discussion to decide on the benefits?
The first step would be you have to be engaged. I'm always happy to talk to anybody, but you really need to be engaged before you want to talk about having a prenup. I can't think of a situation where somebody has come to me with a tremendous amount of debt to seek my counsel to get a prenup. It's always either the moneyed spouse or the other spouse who has been asked to sign a prenup. With regard to physicians, if you see your career is taking off and you're now getting married, that might be a time to consult with a family lawyer.
Are postnups enforceable?
It depends. Neither prenups nor postnups are ironclad. We do everything in our power to dot our I's and cross our T's, but you can never predict what's going to happen. I have clients sometimes that come in and they say, I want a guarantee. And I say, I'm not the right lawyer for you because I cannot guarantee that under any circumstances.
I suspect you've also spent just as much time trying to make sure that the prenup that they had is not enforced. I'm sure that plays a role also. But what percentage of marriages do you think have prenups?
I can only talk about the ones that I see. Maybe 20%, 15, 20%.
Who do you think is encouraging the prenup? Is it the parents that are pushing the prenup and in their 50s, it's them pushing it?
Yes. And I would also say that sometimes the trust and estates lawyers are pushing the parents to push their kids to get the prenup.
That makes sense. So how do we start this conversation? And how many relationships fall apart because of a prenup?
A lot. I have at least one or two a year where it just falls apart in the negotiations. And I hate to say this, but I think somewhat it's a blessing in disguise, because if you can't get this right, think about if you're going to now have children together and have a life together. Sometimes it is the grandparents who are sort of running the show and that becomes problematic. Sometimes there's another party in place and that becomes problematic. But usually we can try to get to the finish line.
And do you have two separate lawyers?
Always. You want to have two really good lawyers in every state. I can tell you I'm not admitted in Kentucky or Ohio or California, but I have lots of friends who practice in all the states and internationally. And I can tell you that generally speaking, the things you want to think about are, number one, putting together your financial affidavit, your assets, your expenses, your liabilities. And you want to put that together and you want to be completely forthright. The last thing you want is a situation where you say, oh, well, my house is worth $1 million and it really was worth $5 million. Or you had a business and you undervalued it. Better to overvalue than undervalue. You want to have the opportunity and you want your fiance to have the opportunity to have counsel. So you don't want to spring this on them the day before the wedding. I had a case many, many years ago. It actually went up to the highest court in Connecticut, the Supreme Court of Connecticut. It was all about a Connecticut divorce, but a New York prenup, and it was signed the day of the wedding. We don't do that. We actually have a policy in my office, a general policy, that if you are calling less than 3 months from the date of the wedding, we generally don't take the case. Why? Because we want to have enough time. We want both parties to have enough time. We want to make sure there's discovery done. And in our language, in our world, that means an exchange of documents. So both parties are fully familiar with all of the assets. If they want to look at appraisals or bank statements, you want to be so open about everything. This isn't a secret.
In our field, there's a lot of ways that patients find doctors and patients find surgeons. Any tips for finding the right person, finding the right fit?
Family lawyers typically get hired first through friends and family and colleagues. But I think it's really, really important that surgeons and the outside world understand where to look if they don't have somebody to ask. What's really important is the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers. This is an organization that is a national organization. I applied about 18 years ago when I was 3. No, just kidding. The application itself is about 50 pages long. You have to be practicing a minimum of 10 years. You need referrals from judges, from colleagues. You have to put in the application how many trials you've had, how many pre-trials. It's an extensive application. Once you do that, you have to take a national exam. This exam is the same exam whether you practice in Connecticut or Idaho, it doesn't matter. And it is an exam similar to the bar exam. You study for months and you take this exam, and it is on about 26 subjects, all relating to family law. If that's not enough, you now get to take a local exam in your state. So in Connecticut, it was a essay exam. It was about 7 or 8 hours long. And then just for fun, you get to go before a board in your state and hope not to get what I'll call blackballed. Needless to say, in the state of Connecticut, we have now about maybe 27 fellows in the whole state. So it's very difficult to get in. And It is an incredible organization, and I have colleagues from all over the country. There's also the International Academy of Family Lawyers, which I'm in also, that has lawyers all over the world. So if I have a client that has an apartment in Paris and I need to get a real estate appraiser in Paris, I know just who to call. We use the academy all the time. You go on social media, it's great, but you really want to know where to look. And I would say the academy is critical.
So let's shift gears a little bit and get to a topic that I would imagine most married people never want to get to, and that's making the decision to get a divorce, finding a divorce lawyer, and at that point, figuring out how to protect assets.
Yes. I think the first thing with finding a divorce lawyer is finding a good fit. Different lawyers have different styles. Different firms have different styles. My firm is a boutique firm. We consider ourselves a family. I mean, most of us have been practicing together anywhere from 5 to 30 years. So we really know each other. We finish each other's sentences. There's some firms that there's only one lawyer. There's some firms that they have a small family practice and a big firm. You really need to find the fit. So people will ask me all the time, should my son or my friend get a man? Should they get a woman? It's not a matter of man or woman. It's a matter of who is the best fit. And even in my office, we sometimes have situations where a client will come in. For me, there's nothing wrong with the client, but I just know this client would do better maybe with my partner Aiden or my partner Peter. Even sometimes in the middle of the case, we will change who the lawyer is because it's a better fit.
Wow. Sounds like you fire clients. Could that happen?
I do. That's not firing. I think it's just a shifting. That's shifting. I agree with you. Shifting is different, but we do fire. Another really important thing is who the other lawyer is. So if the case is already pending, you have the potential client that has already gotten served with divorce papers, who the lawyer is on the other side is key. People always say you want to have two lawyers that get along. It's so true. You really want to have two lawyers that can work well together, not the opposite.
There's these Facebook groups for physicians or physician moms or physicians in Connecticut. There's all these different physician Facebook groups. And when someone says, oh, I'm getting a divorce, the first 100 comments are, make sure you see every divorce lawyer around so that your soon-to-be ex cannot use them. Is that true?
Is it true that that happens, or is it true that that's good advice?
No, is it true that if someone sees you and they don't hire you, can their soon-to-be ex see you 2 months later?
It's a great question. Generally speaking, no. That would be considered a conflict. We have had this issue come up just last week. A client came in. The client's husband, about 10 years ago, saw one of my partners. And fast forward 10 years later, now the wife came in to see me. We will allow the wife to come in and see me, but we will block out. We will have everybody in my office that worked on that case at the time sign paperwork to make it clear that they will not touch this file whatsoever. But if, for example, somebody came to see me last week and then the spouse wanted to come to see either me or one of my partners the next week, that would just be a no.
Even though you know they're not hiring you.
Correct.
So then is it good advice to do that?
It is not good advice.
No.
Straight out of Succession. Did you guys watch that show? That's a
great show. But you hear this all the time. Say it all the time.
First of all, the lawyers who you really don't want on the other side, many of them don't take notes in the consult, and then they will take the other party. So they just sort of decide, I'm going to not follow the law and not do what really ethically they should do. The problem with seeing lots of different lawyers is that you might be conflicting out a lawyer that we want to have on the other side. So If you were to hire me and now you saw 10 lawyers, well, now you probably knocked out 10 of the best lawyers. That's not a good thing.
Right.
And aren't there options where, I mean, obviously divorces can have a very wide range of relatively amicable to the complete opposite.
I would say a day does not go by where somebody doesn't come and ask me about mediators or mediation. They're all different types of mediators. 90% of the time, I go to mediation in cases. What does that mean? It means that when the case gets to a certain stage, I'd say if you think of like a marathon, we're maybe at the 18th or 19th mile. If we can't get to yes and settle the case, the other lawyer and I will hire a mediator. It is either a retired judge, it could be a lawyer from the American Academy of Matrimonial Lawyers, it could be another family lawyer we trust, and we will go to a full day, sometimes more than full day, mediation. There are other mediators out there that are not family lawyers. They hang up a shingle and say, come to me, I'm going to mediate your case. I never understand that because it would be like me saying, I'm going to go do a breast surgery. I mean, I couldn't do that. I don't understand how somebody who didn't go to law school, didn't practice family law, doesn't know the court system, how they can mediate a case. And so that's why I'm saying there's different types of mediation. There are mediators who will mediate a case and ask the clients to each get what's called review counsel. So this is very common also, where each client will have their own lawyer, but the mediator will be sort of running the show.
That's very helpful.
I hope that none of us ever need your services. That would be even more helpful. Although prenups, I don't want to ask my colleagues how many have had prenups. I already know the answer, so I won't ask the question. Are there any final thoughts you want to share with our community of breast surgeons?
Really think long and hard if you're going to get a divorce to do that in advance. Sometimes people wait and wait and wait. And I think it's really important that if you're not sure, going in and having a consultation for 1 hour with a lawyer does not mean you're getting divorced. It doesn't mean it's the end, but sometimes it is critical to thinking about what your future will hold, things you might need to do or not do. So I would really strongly recommend, if things are rocky, having a consultation is just a good idea.
Jill, I think we're going to have you back for part 2 because I have so many other questions about custody and parenting plans and community property and does that exist in 50-50 and all of that. But it's been awesome having you on this special episode of the Next Breast Thing podcast.
Thank you.
To all of our listeners throughout the breast community, we're so excited you've joined us on this journey, and we'll see you next time on the Next Breast Thing podcast.
We look forward to connecting with you on the next episode of The Next Breast Thing, a podcast by the American Society of Breast Surgeons for the breast community.
Also, join the conversation on our Facebook group by searching the Next Breast Thing podcast group on Facebook.
Finally, the content within the Next Breast Thing podcast represents